At 2:13 in the morning, I woke to the sound of metal scraping against brick outside my bedroom window. I lived on the 7th floor of an old apartment building in Chicago, the kind with narrow hallways, unreliable elevators, and a fire escape that rattled whenever the wind came off the lake. I had lived there for almost 3 years, and I knew every sound the building made. Pipes groaned, radiators hissed, and the elevator cables screamed between floors. But this sound was different. Scrape, pause, scrape. I sat up and looked toward the window. Beyond the glass, the fire escape was barely visible through the rain. Then I heard 3 knocks on my window. I froze and grabbed my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam reflected off the glass, showing only my own frightened face. Then something moved behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. When I looked back at the window, a man was standing on the fire escape. He was facing away from me, wearing a dark coat soaked with rain. I shouted, "Hey!" Slowly, he turned his head. His face was pale, not just pale from the cold, but completely colorless, like an old photograph. He raised one hand and pointed downward. Then he disappeared. I ran to the window and unlocked it. I climbed onto the fire escape and started climbing down. After one flight, I noticed something strange. My building looked different. The bricks were cleaner, the windows were larger, and even the fire escape looked newer. Below me, a woman opened a window and stared at me. Then she screamed and slammed the window shut. I climbed down another level and called out, "Please, I'm sorry. I thought this was my building." I looked at my phone and my blood went cold. The screen said September 18th, 1987. I restarted the phone, hoping it was some impossible glitch, but the date remained the same. September 18th, 1987. I climbed down to the 5th floor where a man in a white shirt stepped onto the fire escape. He looked at me with terrified eyes. "What year is it?" I asked. He stared at me before answering, 1987. My stomach dropped. Below us, a newspaper was stuck beneath a dumpster. The headline was barely visible, but I could read the words, "Local man missing after fire." The date was September 19th, 1987. I looked around and realized the fire escape was no longer attached to my apartment building. It was attached to another building entirely. Across the alley, I could see my own building, but it looked much older. Then I saw the pale man standing on the bottom landing. He was staring directly at me. He pointed toward the building behind me and silently mouthed, "Don't go inside." Before I could understand what he meant, the window beside me suddenly opened. A little girl looked out. She couldn't have been older than 8. She stared at me and whispered, "You're not supposed to be here yet." I looked at her and asked, "What does that mean?" She glanced over her shoulder nervously and whispered, "He comes every year." "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She pointed at the pale man. Suddenly, the fire escape began shaking violently. I grabbed the railing as every window in the building slammed open at once. Dozens of faces stared at me. Some were frightened, some were crying, and some looked exactly like people I had seen in my building, including my neighbor from apartment 706, the old man from 402, and the woman who lived across the hall. But they looked younger, much younger. Then I understood. The fire escape wasn't taking me to another building. It was taking me to another year. Somehow, I had stepped into the night before the fire. The pale man appeared again and pointed toward the 7th floor. I looked upward and saw my apartment window, but the curtains were different and a light was on inside. Someone was standing behind them. I began climbing toward it. When I reached the 7th floor, I looked through the window and saw myself. Not the me from now, but a much younger version of myself, maybe 20 years younger. He was standing beside a bed, holding a suitcase. I watched him open the window and climb onto the fire escape. I stepped backward in shock. The younger me looked directly at me. He couldn't have seen me, but somehow he did. His eyes widened, and he whispered something. I moved closer to the glass. He said, "Run." Then the fire alarm began screaming. Smoke poured from the hallway, and the building shook as people started shouting. I tried the window, but it was locked. I pounded on the glass. The younger me ran toward the door, but the pale man suddenly appeared behind him. I screamed. The younger me turned around, and the pale man grabbed him. Then the room filled with smoke. I smashed the window with my phone, and glass exploded outward. I climbed inside. The pale man vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. The younger me was lying on the floor, coughing violently. I grabbed him and pulled him toward the broken window. "Come on," I shouted. He looked at me through the smoke. His eyes widened as he realized who I was. "You're me," he said. "Yes," I answered. Then he asked the question I was terrified to hear. "What happens?" I couldn't answer because suddenly I remembered something I had tried to forget. I had never told anyone why I moved into that apartment. Years earlier, during renovations, I had found an old photograph hidden inside the wall. It showed a man standing on the fire escape, and the man's face looked exactly like mine. I had thrown the photograph away, but somehow I had always dreamed about that fire. Now I understood. I wasn't changing the past. I was completing it. The younger me climbed through the broken window, and the fire escape groaned beneath us. The pale man appeared at the bottom landing and pointed toward the alley. We started climbing down. 1 floor, 2, 3. Smoke poured from the windows around us while people screamed inside the building. At the 4th floor, the younger me suddenly stopped. He looked back toward the burning building. "I can't leave them," he said. "Who?" I asked. He pointed toward the windows. "My neighbors." He tried to climb back up, but I grabbed his arm. "You can't save everyone." He stared at me with tears running down his face. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then the fire escape gave a horrible metallic groan. The railing twisted beneath our hands. The entire structure began collapsing. We fell together. I remember hitting metal. I remember screaming. I remember seeing the younger me disappear into a cloud of smoke. Then everything went black. I woke on my apartment floor. It was morning. The rain was gone, and sunlight was coming through the window. For several minutes, I didn't move. I couldn't understand how I had returned. My phone lay beside me. I picked it up with shaking hands. The date was September 19th, 2026. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. Then I noticed something on my desk, a photograph. I picked it up and turned it over. The picture showed the old building in 1987. 3 people stood in front of it, 2 firefighters and me. I was wearing the same soaked clothes I had been wearing the night before. On the back, someone had written a single sentence. The 4th person was never found. That was when I heard the sound again. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. I slowly turned toward the window. The fire escape was outside, exactly where it had always been. But standing on the lowest landing was the pale man. He raised one hand. This time he wasn't pointing downward. He was pointing directly at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Then my bedroom door opened by itself. Behind it stood a little girl. The same girl from 1987. She looked exactly as she had that night. No older, no different. She smiled sadly and whispered, "You came back." I looked toward the calendar on my wall. September 19th. My hands began shaking. Something was wrong with the page. The year had changed. The calendar no longer showed 2026. It read September 19th, 1987. Somewhere outside my window, the fire alarm began to scream again. The girl slowly stepped into my bedroom. Behind her, the hallway looked darker than it should have been. I heard footsteps approaching from somewhere beyond the door. Then the fire escape rattled violently against the brick wall. I looked toward the window one last time and saw the pale man climbing upward. He wasn't coming from below anymore. He was coming toward me. The girl looked at him and then back at me. "You have to go," she whispered. "Go where?" I asked. She pointed toward the window. I looked outside and saw the fire escape stretching downward into darkness. But this time, I could see dozens of figures standing on every landing. People from different years. People who had died in the fire. People who had disappeared. And among them was the younger version of me, standing silently on the 4th floor. He raised his hand and pointed toward the 7th floor. The pale man reached the window. His colorless face appeared against the glass. He smiled for the first time. I understood then why the photograph had said the 4th person was never found. The 4th person wasn't missing. He had been trapped between years. He had been moving through the fire escape, appearing before every fire, warning people who were never meant to survive. And somehow, that person had always been me. The pale man pressed one hand against the glass. Cracks spread across the window. The girl backed away and whispered, "He needs you to finish it." I shook my head. "Finish what?" She didn't answer. The glass shattered. The cold rain rushed into the room. The pale man stepped through the broken window. I tried to run, but my feet wouldn't move. Behind him, the fire escape stretched into the darkness. And somewhere far below, the fire from 1987 was already burning again. The alarm screamed louder. The girl disappeared. The pale man reached toward me. I looked at the calendar one final time. September 19th, 1987. Then I heard metal scraping against brick. Scrape, pause, scrape. And suddenly I realized the sound had never been coming from outside my window. It had been coming from the fire escape beneath me, climbing upward through every year, waiting for me to hear it.